compression. Even though it's kind of hard to understand and we're still learning what it means. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Nerd Stuff. Nerd Stuff is a growing community of self-taught music producers and self-proclaimed nerds who like to gather together and geek out over the nerddom that is music production. The goal is to build confidence in running our sessions, discuss useful topics that expand our knowledge, and ultimately get songs off of our hard drive and into the world. Let's say it together. No graveyards on hard drives. Over the course of this series, we've discussed multiple topics. Basic production tips, desert island plugins. I would like to return on our journey back to home, where we first started, another deep dive on one of my songs. While I'm always attempting to progress in such a way that my sessions will no longer be as busted as they currently are, I do hope it brings a level of encouragement to some of you who may be struggling with getting your songs off your hard drive and into the world. Because if I'm releasing this and I feel good about it, then you can definitely release whatever's going on in your world too. So without further ado, let's jump into this episode of Nerd Stuff. I have my session open here from my song Bubbles that I released a couple months ago.
Like a dog on a fence, I'm just an expense, begrudgingly feeding me at your convenience.
I started working on this song in May of this year after hearing the Oclou album. Oclou? I don't know, I think it's French. Anyway, I was really inspired by the vocal production going on in that album, and I wanted to sit down and try and make something like that for myself. I mentioned in the first episode of Nerd Stuff, where we broke down my song Honeybee Bear, that was the first time that I really felt like I found my footing when it comes to producing something that had an aesthetic and I was able to execute it. And this song Bubbles to me feels the same way. I heard something that I wanted to recreate and I was able to do it in such a way that felt authentic and true to me. And that's what we call progress. The more you get inspired, the more you want to produce, and the more you produce, the more you learn. So for me, music production really is a learning process. And it is really exciting when you can see progress in the process. So let me show you a few of my favorite moments from this song and talk through some of the ways that I achieved the sounds that I got. Let's start with the main inspiration for the song, which is the vocals.
I've been keeping myself above the water for too long.
Let's go through my channel strip here. I have EQ, AutoTune, Little AlterBoy, UADs 1176, and a noise gate. The main thing that stuck out to me when I was listening to the song that inspired this project was the vocal processing. It sounded very robotic and detuned in a cool way, and I wanted to try and emulate that. And I did by using Soundtoys Little AlterBoy. Little AlterBoy is a monophonic voice manipulator, so if you've ever wanted to turn yourself into a DJ, this would be a good plugin to use that. I didn't necessarily want to go full DJ mode, so what I did was put the pitch all the way down as far as it could go, and then I have the formant at -3.3. I'm in the transpose mode, and then I have drive at about 9 o'clock. My dry wet is also at around 9 o'clock because I wanted this to be a more subtle effect. I also don't usually use a ton of AutoTune in my songs, mostly because I have a really deep vibrato, and I feel like sometimes that sounds like trash when using AutoTune. But with this song, I knew that I wanted to use AutoTune to really play into that robotic aspect, and so I sang the song as straight as I possibly could, which is really hard to do when you're so used to singing with, you know, that's vibrato. It was just an illustration.
Like a weed in the grass, I go way too fast, indulgently kick my feet like I can relax.
Usually in sessions, I like to differentiate between chorus vocals, verse vocals, bridge vocals, and in the choruses, I do have Little AlterBoy at a higher level mix. So that robotic effect is definitely more present in the choruses than it is in the verses. Let's move on to background vocals. Background vocals are my favorite. How many background vocal tracks do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I love background vocals and I would do 1,000 if I could. I think my computer would hate me if I did that.
I open my purse, I ration concern. Everything's on fire, inches ready to burn. I went for a swim and
My favorite thing to do with background vocals is to layer them piece by piece. So in this verse, for example, I have just a double of the melody going on for quite a while, and then I slowly start stacking more parts that maybe are harmonies, or they could also be alternate melodies. In reality, there's not a lot of instrumentation happening in this song, so I think the forward momentum is coming from the background vocals and picking and choosing where those background vocals go. If you're someone who likes to record background vocals a lot, I would recommend giving that a go. Start with a small amount and then slowly build over time as every section progresses. It can add some unique dynamics to your song. Okay, now I'll show you the keys and synths happening in this song. When I'm working on a song that has a theme that I'm trying to go for, I try and pick progressions that will fit into that theme. But for this song, the main thing I wanted to try and emulate was the vocal production. So in reality, the chords were fair game. One thing I did know that I wanted to do with this song was have it be a little bit faster than my other songs. So I have it at 140 BPM. Just started playing some block chords and I liked what came out. On my piano channel strip, I just have EQ, LA2A, and Excellent Audio's RC20. I have two hardware synths. I have a Korg Minilogue and a Prophet 08. And when I'm trying to record synths, I usually just use one or both of those instruments because they're there. But recently I downloaded the UAD PolyMax synth. And this is actually a native UAD plugin, so it's not using any of the CPU from my Apollo. Once I had found a sound that I liked using the PolyMax synth, I bounced those tracks in place just so that I wouldn't lose any of that MIDI information. Bouncing tracks in place is also another way to free up some CPU because you can bounce them in place with the effects currently on them, and then you don't have a bunch of plugins on your channels anymore. The drawback would be you have to be ready to commit to the sound that you created, but I was happy with it, so I bounced it in place. Aww. The Minilogue actually has some pretty fat synth basses, and I wanted to use that during the song. I also have some Mellotron happening on this song. And my Nord Piano 5 is doing some strings too. One thing I did in this song that I've never done with any of my other songs before is sidechaining. I've used sidechaining before in various different ways, but I've never really used it in kind of a classic pop pumping situation, so that was really fun to experiment with. I put all the stuff that I wanted to sidechain into a sum, and then I put a compressor on that sum that is linked to a kick drum. When the compressor is triggered by the impact of the kick drum, that's what causes that pumping effect. I do remember struggling a little bit with the organizational side because I didn't want those instruments to be sidechained the entire time. I thought about creating new tracks, but I already had 60, and I just didn't really want to make any more. So what I did was I automated the compressor to have a bypass for most of the song, and then when I wanted it to turn on for the sidechain moment, I turned the bypass off. I did also have to do some volume automation to make up for the moments that were not being specifically compressed by this sidechain compressor, so that was kind of annoying. I'm sure there's a better way to do that. If anyone knows a better way to do sidechaining, let me know. We love sidechaining. We love compression, even though it's kind of hard to understand and we're still learning what it means. All right. A while back, I decided to make a template for Logic that was meant for my lo-fi sessions. That way, my frequently used sounds and channel strips are ready to go. I used that template for this song, not necessarily for the reason to make it lo-fi, but just because having a template is truly such a game changer for workflow. If you have a lot of common denominator instruments or effects or presets that you like to use across your songs, I would highly recommend spending a couple hours and creating a template. And you can continue to update that template as your needs change and arise. So for this song, I used my lo-fi template, and what's nice about that is that I already had my own battery kit lined up for me to use for drums. This is a custom kit on battery that I created with lo-fi sounds that I got from Splice. And because I've used it so much, I'm really familiar with it, so I know exactly what I'm looking for when I use that. Just another sign to take the time. I know it's boring, it's not always fun, but setting yourself up for success later on, future you will love you for past you taking the time to do that. You know, let's give our past selves a pat on the back for being there for us when we needed them most. This song is fairly simple when it comes to the drums. I knew that I wanted just a really straight ahead beat, so most of it is 2 and 4, except for there's a transition section before verse 2 where I added some loops and messed around with some of the effects on the drums. On my kick drum channel, I have Ozone 9 vintage limiter and Soundtoys Decapitator. The limiter helps with bringing up the overall perceived volume of this sample and really making it punch. And then the Decapitator is giving it a slight drive. On my snare channel, I also have Decapitator as well as Soundtoys Superplate for a small verb. I've mentioned this before, but whenever I use drum loops in a session, I always like to supplement them with additional instruments. Whether those are organic or more samples, I just want something that's going to differentiate the sound and make it feel more authentic to me, rather than just a random loop that I pulled into the session. I wanted the drum loop to feel really roomy while the other samples feel really in your face, and so combining them like that, I think gave it a really cool sound. The last thing I did before finishing up this song was master it with Ozone's mastering assistant. For someone like me who knows jack squat about mastering, using the presets on Ozone 9 is a little more helpful to me rather than using the mastering assistant, because I think with the presets, knowing the general outcome of this is an electronic song, so go for this preset, or this is an organic song, go for this preset. Seeing how their channel strips are laid out and what different types of effects they're using to master the song is more helpful to me than just using the mastering assistant every time. Because then I can see the different uses of these different effects that the channel strip is giving me. Does that make sense? I don't know. I love presets. They're there for a reason. For me. Just for me. Overall, I'm really happy with how this song turned out. I'd mentioned that I started working on this song in May and then I released it in August, and I feel like for me that's a pretty quick turnaround. Just because my songs are kind of like my journal and I produce them myself, I don't usually hold myself to a strict schedule when it comes to this is how long it's going to take to produce and this is when I want to release. It would probably be better to be on some kind of a schedule. But that's not the season that I'm in right now, and I feel like this was a relatively quick turnaround time for me. There were a lot of challenging moments in producing this song that I feel like I overcame. Figuring out the sidechaining situation, feeling really good about the way that I emulated vocal processing techniques from a song reference. And then unrelated to music production, on the back end, I was able to make my first music video for the song, which was really fun. My husband and I recorded it together and I did the editing. So overall, I feel like this particular song was a big learning experience for me. And I feel like I grew and achieved something cool. I'm definitely not a professional by any means, but I feel comfortable running my sessions, and every time I sit down to produce something, I'm learning something new, and I'm really eager to share it with other people that I know are in the same boat as me. So on that note, I hope that walking through my session was helpful for you, and if anything, just serves as an encouragement that this is a mess, this is a mess, but it's okay. We can still release music that we're proud of, even with this. That does it for this episode of Nerd Stuff. This obviously was a breakdown of a song that's already released, but right now I'm working on a bunch of new music, which could be fun to walk through the in-progress songs together. So let me know if that would be interesting to you, or if there's something else that you would like to see happen here on Nerd Stuff. If you are new to the Nerd Stuff community, please consider becoming the biggest nerd of all time and giving my channel a subscribe, and give it a thumbs up. We'll see you on the next episode of Nerd Stuff. Bye!